You went to California.
I was 18. I worked at Disneyland Hotel Complex in Cyprus. I lived with my aunt and uncle for 5 months before my uncle and I had a fight and I had to move out.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't a good Catholic girl and I didn't listen like the rest of them did.
Was Janet and Tish living there too?
No, Janet had her own condo. Tish was living with Janet and she was contemplating marriage with Ron. And Tish set me up on a horrid blind date.
What was
I had a really bad headache that night too.
So what happened on the blind?
It got worse as the evening went on. I went, get me out of here, my head is pounding. Tish will remember that. Trust me.
Then you came back to Pennsylvania?
I came back to Pennsylvania and I worked and I went to college and then...
Where'd you go to college? Penn State?
Campus.
Yeah.
Campus.
Mm-hmm.
And then I left and I went to West by God, Virginia, and I spent 8 years in West by God, Virginia.
What'd you do there?
Well, I was a merchandising assistant at JCPenney's.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got married and I had 2 wonderful little children.
Yeah.
You worked at JCPenney's while you were home. You worked
Yeah, I transferred from here. I transferred from Altoona to West Virginia. And lived there till 1990, got divorced in 86, got remarried in 90, moved to Gaithersburg, Maryland, lived in Maryland for a year, left there and went to Alabama for 3.
How was Alabama?
Horrid.
What didn't you like about it?
It's too freaking hot. People are not nice. The only thing I liked is the fact that where we lived was very large. It was very spacious. It was inexpensive. The people were down there are just a tad bit different. The South, the old boy system still lives on.
Mm-hmm. What does that mean?
There's still the black-white war going on, and women will never have equality down there because they'll never let it happen. You have to fight for everything you get down there. And then we moved back to Pennsylvania in 94. I guess it was 94. It was either late 93 or 94. It's probably 94. And I've been here ever since, in the Burg.
How do you like Hollidaysburg?
I love Hollidaysburg. I like my dog, I like my kids, I like my mom. I like my house, when it'll be all done. When demolition will be over with. We are in phase 2 of demolition.
How many phases are there going to be?
Well, there's the actual destruction.
That's phase 1.
And then there's, we're in the rebuilding, and then there'll be the finishing phase.
So that's the 3rd phase.
Yeah, we're not close to that phase yet. So, this is my week's vacation that I'm spending doing demolition.
Did you write your resume yet?
No, I haven't done that yet. I've been a little busy.
You're moving on? You're changing jobs?
No, my company got purchased, and we have to do job descriptions on the side
Oh.
for people.
What kind of work do you do?
I'm a bid specialist. I do bids for foods, for schools, for nursing homes, for prisons, state facilities. It's very tedious.
You don't like your job?
Oh no, I like my job because people leave me alone.
Well, that's
Let me
good.
do what I want. And I like that. And that's enough. Now you can just stop now.
Okay.
So there, you have pretty much my rundown, okay?
All right. That's it.
Cut!
Where were you? Where were you born?
In Hollidaysburg.
And you've lived here your whole life?
I've lived here my whole life.
Yeah. Where did you go to school?
Well, elementary school, I went up here, it used to be the Hillcrest,
Yeah.
and then I went to Central,
Yeah.
and both of those schools are gone now. And junior high, which is junior high now, but it's senior high when I went to school. And I graduated in 1944. During the war, I went to Philadelphia and went for the Signal Corps, Army Signal Corps.
What'd you do for them?
It was mostly filing and secretarial stuff.
Yeah.
And I came home and I went to work for a little grocery store out in Penn Street. And I worked for there for about a year, and then I went to Bell Telephone. And I worked there till 1952, probably 53. I worked as a telephone operator and then in the plant department.
Yeah.
And I
Quit
got married in 48, huh?
You're right. You're gonna make me dizzy.
Oh.
So you work for the telephone company.
Bell Telephone. Yeah.
What'd you do for the telephone
I
company?
was an operator in Hollidaysburg.
Oh, really? How many operators did they have?
Oh my gosh, we had a whole slew of operators. Mike, my sister, was an operator, and I was an operator. Oh my gosh, we had 3 tricks of operators because you had to call the operator to make the call then. So we had first trick, second trick, and third trick.
So your whole family were the operators?
No. My sister and Mike worked there also.
Yeah.
And then I had Ellen in 1953, and then you didn't go back to work. You didn't have daycare. And then
Ellen's your youngest?
I was
Your oldest?
Jeff was born in 1955.
Yeah.
And Dee went in the insurance business in 1957. And I worked in his office until, well, Beth was born in 59, and she was 4 years old when I quit being a secretary.
How'd you meet Dewey?
Well, I knew Dewey from first grade. We went to school together in Hillcrest, and we started dating when we were freshmen in high school. We went to the freshman class party.
And you continuously dated after that?
Yeah, well, he went to service in 1940. He left school in 1943 when he was a junior. Went to the Marine Corps.
A junior in high school?
He came back and got his high school diploma, and he went up to St. Francis College for a while. And then he transferred to Penn State Altoona, but he was taking care of his younger brother, and he just couldn't make it there with the amount of money he had. So he went to work at the EMP store. Where his brother Joe also worked.
Yeah.
And I left Dewey's office in 1957. He got another secretary.
How did you get involved in the insurance industry?
Well, John Maurer, who was the manager, came into town and just started talking to people. And Dewey's name came up more often than anybody else's name.
Yeah.
So he came to see him and talked him into going to the insurance business. And we had the insurance office in the house when he first started, because we started with zero, zilch, no money at all. And they kind of compensated us every month till he got built up enough to pay the company back, and then we started making money. And that's it. Kids. Took care of the kids. We moved up here.
And when did you buy this house?
37 years ago.
Would it have been 1963?
Yeah, right after Kennedy was shot, because we had moved in, and we still had the office down at 213 Ellis Street, and I went to the office, and he was outside, and I was down there the day Kennedy was shot. We had a television down there. So that's it.
Where'd you live before you lived here?
We lived in an apartment on Allegheny Street when we were first married.
Yeah.
And then we bought that little house on Ellis Street, and he gutted it and put a bathroom in and a second floor and worked very hard. And then we bought this house. That's the only 3 places we've lived since we were married.
How many brothers and sisters do you have?
I do have Bill,
Yeah.
Mike, Dick, and Pinky. Dick died about when he was 22. He had lung problems. Mike died 1996. Mike died in 1994. He had cancer. And Pinky and Bill and I are the ones left. So that's pretty much my story.
That's your whole. What about your kids? Tell me about your kids.
Yeah. Ellen was very good in high school. She worked all during her high school years. She was working in the kitchen over at Eastern Home. She went to Penn State down at State College. No, she went in here 2 years at the campus in Altoona. And then she transferred down to Penn State.
Yeah.
And she had a degree in elementary education. And the first year out, the first grade teacher got sick. And she thought she was just going for about a week or two, and she went for the whole year. But she was beginning to doubt if that's what she wanted to do. And the next year she went as a substitute, and she came home one day and she said, "Mom, I don't want to do this. I don't like teaching." Ellen wasn't forceful enough to be a teacher.
So how'd you feel about that?
I said, fine, I think you should do what you want to do. And I knew she wasn't happy doing that, so she was going with a kid who she met in college, and he had moved down. He was with the Anderson accounting firm. I'm sure you heard of them.
Yeah, what was his name?
Dave Daly.
Yeah.
And she and I were on vacation someplace, I don't know, and she said to my mother, "I'm going down to Washington, D.C. and get a job. Dave's down there." And my mother said, "Go right ahead." So she did. And
She moved from Hollidaysburg to D.C.?
She got a job with the American Veterans something or other.
Yeah.
Because she could spell and she could write sentences, and she was pretty, the English language she was good at. And then somewhere along the way she got in with Social Security.
Mm-hmm.
She worked in the field claims office, and she went to West Virginia to train. And Dewey and Jeff and Faye and I went to West Virginia. And that's the first time we ever heard of Mark. He was also training at that same field office.
Oh, that's how they met?
Yeah, and he was expecting to go with the FBI, I think, in California, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Anyhow, he met her and she met him, and she came back up and told Dave that it was all over. And Dave wasn't the marrying type, but he said he would get married if he, stayed with him. And she said no. So, that's how, and then she's up to the highest place she can go in Social Security without becoming a lawyer. They wanted her to go back to school to be a lawyer, and she said she wasn't interested in being a lawyer. So she writes briefs all the time when people are denied
Social Security.
Social Security, it goes to a judge, and if he denies it, then it comes back to her office, and she has the final say. And she has to write a brief on it.
Okay, then your second one's Jeff.
Jeff went to Pitt. He wouldn't go to Penn State. If I had to go to Penn State, I'm not going to school.
Why did he not want to go to Penn State?
He just didn't want to go to Penn State. He didn't like Penn State. So he went to Pitt, and he worked for a company over there that made, the things you put in the roof, they look like this, that you put in the roof. I can't think of what they are.
Yeah.
And the Dick Corporation, I think it was called in Pittsburgh. And he went to work for them after he came out of school, full time. And he was sick of the traffic and sick of the weather. And in his engineering magazine, they had a job for Hawaii. So he wrote.
This is after he graduated from Pitt? With a degree in engineering?
Yeah, civil engineering.
Yeah.
He started out to be a dentist, and he came around and said, "I can't stand looking in people's mouths. I'm changing a major." So this guy came from Hawaii, and his home was either one of the New England states. So he went home to visit, and he came back down around and he interviewed Jeff in Pittsburgh. And after he had the interview, he called, he wrote, and he finally got the job.
In Hawaii?
In Hawaii, and that was Panko. And he and Faye had no intention of getting married, but when he was going to Hawaii...
How did you meet Faye? At school?
At school, she went to Carnegie Mellon. And Jeff's roommate was Carnegie Mellon. He lived in Hollidaysburg. In fact, he had two roommates from Carnegie Mellon, two guys.
Is that Carnegie Mellon? Is that part of Pitt, University of Pittsburgh?
No, it's a school, a very prestigious school in Pittsburgh, very expensive.
Oh, okay.
And he brought her home a couple times. They all came home a couple times. And they decided they would get married, and she would go to Hawaii with them. So they were married in a Greek church in Pittsburgh. And my mother and Ellen and Mark and Judy and I were there, and they had this big dinner at one of the Poli's restaurant. It was a big restaurant in Pittsburgh at the time. And they went to Hawaii. And he was with Panko, and then the guy that had interviewed him decided he was going out on his own, so he asked Jeff to come as a partner. So then they came back to Austin, Texas, and started their own business. And then he sent Jeff back to Hawaii to run our Hawaiian office for him. And we were down in Austin, Texas once, and Bill was his name.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I have never in my life seen anybody that can do estimating like Jeff can do it. He said he's the best estimator I've ever seen. And he had worked in the construction business for a long time. So then the Austin, Texas office wasn't pulling their weight. And things were going down in Hawaii because the Japanese were forbidden to come and buy land. That's who was buying all the land and tearing the houses down and putting buildings up, and they'd tear a McDonald's down on the corner and put a Gucci store up or something like that, you know. But things were falling apart in Hawaii and in Texas, and he and Bill had a party of the ways. So he always looked for somebody that was going to bring us furniture and 2 cars and a piano across the water. So this company from Chicago got in touch with him.
Oh, and he moved to Chicago.
We moved to Chicago. Julie and I went out and we looked for houses. And I can't think of the top town, but where the town where Northwestern University is, it was a little college town, very nice. They bought like a townhouse there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Jeff didn't like Chicago and needed to pay. So he quit that company and he came to where he is now, Barrington, Rhode Island. Some of his friends were going to build a mall, and they just wanted him to come and be a consultant. Well, the people up there didn't want a mall, and they fought it tooth and nail, so it never got off the ground. And the company that he worked for in Chicago called him, and they needed somebody to run their office in Boston. So he was getting ready to leave for Greece at that time. Faye's grandmother and aunts and uncles are still in Greece. So he told them what he wanted. He told them how much money he wanted, and he wanted time to go to Greece, and they agreed to everything he wanted. So he went to Greece and came back and went to work for them.
And that's where he works now.
That's where he is now. And he just told me last night he's going to thinking of taking 2 years off. He's tired. He works very hard.
He's going to take 2 years off?
That's what he said.
Wow, that's nice.
Yeah.
What's he going to do?
Nothing. He said he's tired. I don't know what you do. I'm sure they're not going to hold a job for 2 years.
Well, if they like him well enough, they'll rehire him.
I don't know what they'll do. I didn't ask him that question. I said, if you can afford it, Jeff, that's fine. And he said, I can afford it. So I don't know what he's going to do. He probably, he's had a phase in school, and she's going, and he's keeping the kids on the weekends, and 2 nights, I think, a week, and I think they're all just kind of worn out. Because they were supposed to leave for Greece in August, and Faye said she's just not up to even getting ready to go. So I think after once, maybe they get over this hump, that he won't feel this way about it. Because he moved the whole office. He had a beautiful office in Boston, and one side was the river, and the other side was the airport. He had windows on,
Both sides?
And, of course, he lived in Barrington, Rhode Island, so he just moved the whole office to north of Providence, which he still had about a 45-minute drive, but not that drive
Into Boston.
He rode the train most of the time, but he still has to go to Boston because they're part of that big dig up there that's gone on for years. It cost them millions of dollars, but they like that, they're over budget right now. He said, that's when we like it, Mom, when it's over budget and we got all this extra money. So that's where he is. He has Celia and Theo. Well, you know that.
Yeah, we went out and visited him last year.
Yeah. So Faye is a very bright girl. She worked for the University of Hawaii. Well, her major was, I can't think what they called them. She edited books for the university. People wrote books and she went over them for grammar and,
That's probably Charlotte.
Completely white when I got her. Yeah. And now she's turning yellow. So, actually she was black. She was so dirty, had so much fur. Hello. Hello. She's coming around. She's not perfect. Got a long shot.
We've got to really work on that puppy rehab. Talk to the fur on her ear.
Well, I said the dog trainer went to it. She puts a clothesline on them. Long, as long as you can get. It is on 24 hours a day in the house and outside. The dog goes to do like jumping the fence, whatever. You can stop it. You just put your foot in the clothesline and it'll bring the dog up short.
Yeah.
Or if it goes to jump on somebody, you
Yeah,
just tramp on the clothesline.
She jumps and bites at the same time. So she's
Well, that's
biting on
Puppy's
your
right
head.
teeth.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, that's Puppy's right teeth.
Okay, go ahead. You're on tape.
Okay,
Tell us your life. How old are you?
I'm 17.
Yeah?
I'm going to school at Hollidaysburg.
Yeah, what grade are you in?
So I'm a senior now.
Yeah?
Main on campus.
Yeah?
And
Are you the president of your class? Are you involved in any sports?
not any school sports. I was the manager of the wrestling team this past year. And,
Yeah?
so I'm not involved in any school sports. I did some football and
Did you wrestle at all?
a little, yeah. And but mostly I'm just doing taekwondo.
Are you?
That and,
Yeah, what belt are you?
I'm a green belt right now.
Uh-huh. What are you going to do when you graduate?
I plan to go on to college. Probably, I'd like to go to, I can't think of the name of it now.
You can't remember where you're going to go to college?
Indiana. I want to go to IUP.
What's that?
Indiana University, Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay.
It's,
Where's that?
It's,
In Indiana, Pennsylvania?
no, it's down near Juniata. It's a little south of here. It's about an hour's drive.
Yeah?
It's a real good teaching school. I'm going to teach languages.
You're going to teach languages?
Yeah, mostly German.
Oh, you speak German? Sprechen Sie Deutsch?
Yeah.
Was wollen Sie morgen machen?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. You lived in Germany, didn't you?
Yeah, I lived in Germany for about 3 weeks.
3 weeks?
Yeah, well, I lived there for 3 weeks, and then after that, I spent another 10 days on a tour of Bavaria and Austria.
Yeah, how'd you like that?
Oh, it was great.
Yeah, that is nice.
Went to Vienna and Munich.
Did you go to Switzerland?
No, we didn't make it into Switzerland. That wasn't part. We made.
Well, you went to Bavaria. That's very
yeah,
similar.
We went to most of Austria too.